Saudi Arabia is seeking to cement its ties with the African continent. It will host the Saudi-Africa Summit to consolidate its diplomatic relations with Africa. Riyadh is also repositioning itself as a central player in the Middle East. So for more on what to expect, let's cross to our reporter Khayelihle Khumalo. Perhaps, Kaya, at this point, good afternoon, South African time. You can give us an update as to really where you are, talk to the significance of the summit, especially since it is taking place really in light of what's happening in the Middle East.
This capital, Riyadh, as quite a number of African leaders are here really to focus on an array of issues, whether you're looking at the issues pertaining to food security, issues around security. As you know, that Saudi Arabia has been a very key player when it comes to the mediation process. You look at the current situation in Sudan, really. And quite important issue here is that South Africa is represented by the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, who is yet to speak. But a number of African leaders really have been speaking here. They're talking about the importance of Saudi-Africa relationship, you know, dating back to so many years, but also issue around the geographic proximity of the continent and Saudi Arabia as well. So it's really well attended. So many leaders from the continent. You look at Southern Africa, you look at East Africa, you look at also the Horn of Africa. In fact, the Zambian President Khayelihle Khumalo, who just spoke, said Africa really needs the partners, and the Saudi really has proven to be a very important partner to the continent, especially because we do know that this is an energy giant, but also when you talk about the issues around renewable energy, Saudi is repositioning itself as well, where they are decarbonizing, where they're talking about sustainable development. So it's going to be a very interesting time here in Riyadh. Also issues around what is happening not far from here, what is happening in Gaza, a very big issue here. A lot of leaders really have just been calling for an immediate cessation of hostilities, calling for a comprehensive ceasefire, talking about the atrocities that have been committed in that enclave, but also calling for Israeli defense force to really just not be very harsh in terms of the shelling that you have seen, the aerial bombardment and the intensification of the ground offensive. So we're yet to hear from South Africa's Deputy President Paul Mashatile right in Saudi, especially because we do know of the bilateral relations between South Africa and Saudi Arabia in terms of how they collaborate. I mean, Saudi Arabia recently just joined BRICS, but also these are G20 members. These are very important economies. And also, when you look at the Saudis' Vision 2030, Liesl, they talk about a number of issues. Tourism as well, a very important sector for this country, but also for the South Africans to come and explore this very largest country in the Middle East. But also something that is very key here will have to be around food security, but also making sure that Saudi continues to be a very strong player in terms of peacemaking process. But also there are quite a number of challenges. We know that right on the verge of the normalization of the diplomatic ties between Israel and Saudi Arabia, we saw the conflict really just erupting with that incursion led by Hamas into Israel. But of course, we have seen subsequent to those events, the bombardment of Gaza and all kinds of things. So it's going to be a very interesting time, but also the South African delegation led by Deputy President Paul Mashatile. You also do have the International Relations and Cooperation Minister, Dr. Naledi Pandor, who's been really quite outspoken about the situation, especially when you look at the context of South Africa, that the Department of International Relations, Liesl, just summoned into their head office.
All right, Khayelihle Khumalo, of course, live from Saudi Arabia. They're just bringing us the latest. We're obviously looking at Saudi Arabia, who is now seeking to cement its ties with the African continent, hosting the Saudi Arabian Summit to consolidate diplomatic relations with Africa.